The streetlights along Route 73 flickered like dying candles that night, just enough to cast a faint orange glow on the cracked asphalt and the "Welcome to Westbridge" sign that leaned slightly toward the ditch. It was 12:07 a.m. when the dispatcher at the small-town police station picked up the call that would change everything. A woman's voice, breathless, trembling, almost fading into static, came through the line. This is Katie Mercer. I think someone's in my house." Then, a crash, a muffled shout, and silence. The line stayed open for exactly 41 seconds before it went dead. At first, nobody panicked. In a town like Westbridge, people didn't vanish. Not really. Maybe Katie was having a panic attack. Maybe it was a prank. But when the responding deputy, Mark Ellis, pulled into her gravel driveway 15 minutes later, the front door was wide open, and the only sound was the wind pushing through the cottonwoods that bordered the property. Her car was still there. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, and her coffee, half drunk, was still steaming. Deputy Ellis would later testify that the air felt wrong. Not just quiet, wrong. Like the silence was holding its breath. He called for backup, did a sweep of the house, and found nothing. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no forced entry. The only detail he noticed was that the back door, which opened toward the woods, had fresh dirt smeared on the knob. And on the table, under a small pool of spilled coffee, was an envelope. It had no stamp, no name, just a black smudge where someone had rubbed out the writing. Inside was a single photograph. It showed a field outside town, empty except for an old wooden cross standing at an angle in the tall grass. On the back, in faded pen, someone had written 2 words: "She knows." That was the night Westbridge stopped pretending to be normal. The next morning, the town woke up to flashing lights and a dozen cruisers lined up along the edge of Maple Drive. Katie Mercer, 27, a local teacher and volunteer at the community theater, was officially missing. Her mother, Denise, told reporters she'd spoken to her daughter around 10 p.m. Katie had sounded tired but fine. She'd been grading papers, planning a field trip. Nothing strange. By noon, the FBI had been notified. That alone was unusual. Normally, a missing adult in a town of 8,000 didn't make it past state jurisdiction. But there was something about the call, something about the recording that made the Bureau take notice. According to a later leak, audio techs who cleaned up the 911 file said they could hear a second voice in the background, low, distorted, almost whispering. It said, "Tell them what you did." When Special Agent Thomas Hale arrived in Westbridge 2 days later, he'd already read every word of the case file. He was a quiet man, ex-military, methodical, with a calm presence that unnerved small-town cops. He parked his unmarked SUV across from the Mercer property and watched the house for nearly 10 minutes before walking in. "Small towns always have secrets," he said later in his field notes. "The problem is figuring out which ones are worth dying for." Hale met with the local sheriff, Don Weaver, who'd been on the job 30 years and didn't appreciate outsiders. But even he admitted something about this case felt off. No ransom note, no witnesses, no signs of flight. It was like she'd walked out of existence. When Hale asked for the town's missing person records, the sheriff hesitated. "We don't really keep those on file," he said. "Not for adults. People come and go." Hale raised an eyebrow. How often do they go? The sheriff didn't answer. That afternoon, Hale visited the spot from the photograph, the field with the leaning cross. It was 3 miles outside town, near a disused railroad line that cut through the woods. He found the cross exactly as pictured, half swallowed by weeds. When he brushed away the dirt at its base, something glinted in the sunlight. It was a small, tarnished bracelet, engraved with the initials K.M. Katie Mercer. But that wasn't what made him freeze. Buried under the soil, wrapped in a piece of oilcloth, was another photograph. Older, black and white, frayed around the edges. It showed a group of men standing in the same field sometime in the 1970s. One of them was wearing a deputy's badge, and in the background, barely visible through the grain, was the same cross. Back in town, word spread fast. By the 3rd day, half of Westbridge was out searching the woods. Volunteers, firefighters, even high school kids combed the trails with flashlights and dogs. But nothing turned up. No scent trail, no footprints, no discarded clothes. Just the forest, endless and quiet. That night, Hale sat in the motel room, replaying the 911 call on his laptop. He isolated the whisper again. Tell them what you did. And noticed something he hadn't before. In the background, right before the line cut off, there was a faint metallic sound. A chain, or maybe a gate. And beneath that, a single note of music. A piano key. When he checked the map, he saw there was only one place in town with both. The old Westbridge Community Center, which had been shut down since 1994 after a fire gutted its auditorium. At dawn, he went there. The community center sat at the edge of the river, half hidden behind a fence of overgrown vines. Inside, the floorboards were warped and covered in soot. But in the main hall, Hale found a grand piano, its lid half melted, its keys yellowed with age. On the floor beside it was something burned but recognizable. The corner of a photograph, the same glossy finish as the one left on Katie's table. Only this one showed something else, a basement door with a single light bulb hanging above it. In the corner of the room, Hale found a hatch. It led down. The basement smelled of damp wood and iron. His flashlight beam caught the glint of metal hooks embedded in the walls, chains still attached. And on the floor, carved into the concrete, were faint letters, each one drawn by hand. They spelled out a name, Abigail. Hale's pulse quickened. He radioed for backup, but before he could finish, something moved behind him, a creak of old timber, followed by the soft scrape of shoes against concrete. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer, just the echo of his own voice bouncing back, distorted by the low ceiling. He turned his light toward the far corner and froze. There, half hidden behind a collapsed shelf, was a mural painted on the wall. A mural of children holding hands in front of a church, and above them, someone had scrawled a phrase in black paint. "Forgive us." Below the mural was a single shoe, small, white, with a child's name written on the insole. Katie's, but it wasn't new. The style hadn't been sold in over 30 years. Outside, the sun was rising over the trees when Hale emerged from the basement. He stood in the parking lot, breathing hard, the morning fog rolling in from the river. For the first time, he noticed the church steeple visible through the mist, just beyond the field. It was the same one from the photograph. He took one last look at the cross on the hill, then turned back toward town. Whatever happened to Katie Mercer, he realized, didn't start that night. It started decades ago, and the people of Westbridge had been burying it ever since. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, the fog had thinned to a low silver mist. Agent Hale stood outside the old community center, waiting for the sheriff's cruiser to arrive. He'd been in dozens of towns like this one, quiet, suspicious, self-contained. But Westbridge had a different kind of silence. It wasn't the calm of a small town. It was the silence of something sealed shut. When Sheriff Weaver finally pulled up, Hale met him halfway down the cracked parking lot. The older man's hat shadowed his eyes, but his tone carried irritation more than concern. "You shouldn't have gone in there alone," Weaver said. "Place isn't exactly off limits," Hale replied. "Besides, I found something." Weaver paused. "Found what?" Hale opened the trunk of his SUV and lifted a sealed evidence bag. Inside was the child's shoe. Small, cracked leather, one lace missing. Katie Mercer's, or something someone wanted us to think was hers. Weaver leaned closer, frowning. "That model hasn't been made since, hell, before I even joined the force. 1979, Hale said. That's when the photo I found was taken." The sheriff didn't answer right away. He just rubbed the back of his neck, looking toward the field where the cross stood like a sentry. "You sure you want to dig that deep, Agent? This town's got ghosts older than both of us. That's exactly why I'm here." They drove to the station in silence. Hale could feel Weaver watching him from the corner of his eye. The man wasn't used to outside scrutiny. His office walls were lined with fishing photos, plaques, and a yellowed newspaper article about a high school football win from 1986. The phone rang twice before the sheriff answered it. "Westbridge County Sheriff's Office," Weaver said. Yeah, we got him here." He covered the receiver, lowering his voice. "That's Denise Mercer. She wants to see you." Hale nodded. "Tell her I'll meet her at the house." When Weaver hung up, he gave Hale a look that was more warning than invitation. "Denise lost her husband 10 years ago. Lost her daughter now. Don't go digging for stories that'll tear her apart." "I'm not digging for stories," Hale said quietly. "I'm digging for the truth." The Mercer house felt smaller in daylight. The scent of coffee still clung to the air, and the morning light made everything look too still, like the world had been paused mid-sentence. Denise sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. "She called me that night," Denise said, her voice thin and hoarse. "Said she couldn't sleep. Said she'd been dreaming about a little girl standing by the cross in the field. I told her it was just the wind in the trees, but she said she'd seen her before." "Before when?" Hale asked. Denise hesitated. "When she was a child, maybe 7. We were driving home from church and she made me stop the car. Said there was a girl standing in the field waving. I didn't see anyone. She never forgot it." Hale's eyes drifted toward the photo still sitting on the counter, the one that had been left in the envelope. Did she ever mention who the girl might be? "She said her name was Abby," Denise whispered, like it was someone she knew. Hale froze. "Abigail?" Denise nodded slowly. "She said she used to talk to her at night." That afternoon, Hale requested the archived police reports from 1979 through 1985. The clerk, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a cigarette-stained voice, brought out 2 boxes of old paper files. When Hale told her what he was looking for, her expression tightened. "You won't find much," she said. "A flood hit the records room back in '96. Most of what we had from the '70s is gone." Anything survive? Hale asked. She glanced around the room before pulling a single folder from under the desk. You didn't get this from me. Inside was a photocopied incident report from June 4th, 1980. Missing juvenile, Abigail Moore. Age 9. Last seen near Westbridge Community Center. Case closed, 1983. No remains recovered. The report was signed by a deputy named Robert Weaver. Sheriff Don Weaver. That night, Hale sat in his motel room under the flicker of a single lamp, staring at the file. He couldn't shake the image of the mural, children holding hands, "Forgive us," painted above. He cross-referenced Abigail's name in the FBI's database. Nothing. No family history. No medical records. No school enrollment after 1980. It was as if she'd never existed. At 2:13 a.m., a message came through the secure line from Quantico. Forensics had analyzed the audio from the 911 call again. They'd isolated the whisper's tone. It wasn't male. It was female. Young, around 10 years old. The next morning, Hale drove out to the Westbridge Church, the same one that appeared faintly behind the cross in the photographs. The building was old, white paint peeling, windows fogged with years of humidity. The sign out front still read, First Baptist of Westbridge, Sunday service, 9:30 a.m. Inside, the air was heavy with incense and mildew. A man in his 70s was sweeping near the altar. You lost? He asked without looking up. Agent Thomas Hale, FBI, Hale said, showing his badge. I'm looking into the Mercer disappearance. The man nodded slowly. I heard. Tragic thing. Did you know her? Everyone knows everyone here, the man said. Her mother still comes to service. Hale glanced at the stained glass window behind the pulpit. The central image was of a girl holding a candle, surrounded by angels. At the bottom of the frame, etched in gold letters, was a name, in memory of Abigail Moore. 7/21/1980. Who put that there? Hale asked. The janitor stopped sweeping. Church did. Said it was for the little girl who wandered off one summer. Sheriff at the time said she must have drowned. Drowned where? The man pointed toward the far wall. The river runs right behind the church. Back then, before the floods, it was deeper. Hale stepped outside and followed the slope behind the building. The riverbank was soft and overgrown, littered with driftwood and bottle glass. But something about the terrain caught his attention. A low depression near a half-buried signpost. He crouched down and brushed away the leaves. It wasn't a signpost. It was a small wooden cross, half-rotted, painted white. He brushed off the dirt. On the base, carved in uneven letters, was a single word: forgive. That evening, as dusk settled over the town, Hale returned to the station to confront Sheriff Weaver. He laid the old case file on the desk between them. You were the responding officer for Abigail Moore's disappearance, Hale said. Weaver leaned back, folding his arms. That was 45 years ago. I was a rookie. You closed the case 3 years later. Because there was nothing to find. Hale slid a photograph across the table. The mural, the word, forgive us. Then explain this. The same name, the same field, the same symbols. You telling me that's a coincidence? Weaver's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about, Agent. Then tell me. For a long moment, the sheriff said nothing. Then he sighed and looked out the window toward the dark outline of the woods. There were things back then. People who thought they were doing the right thing. What things? He looked back at Hale, eyes filled with something between shame and warning. You ever hear of the Westbridge orphan program? Hale shook his head. It was a private thing, church-run. They took in kids nobody wanted, orphans, runaways. Said they were helping them find homes. Weaver's voice dropped lower, but they didn't all make it that far. Hale felt a chill run through him. What happened to them? Weaver swallowed hard. Ask the pastor. He's the only one left who knows the truth. That night, the church stood in silence under the crescent moon. The door was unlocked. Hale stepped inside, flashlight cutting across the pews, dust swirling in the beam. He moved toward the altar, past the golden plaque bearing Abigail's name. Behind it, hidden in the wooden molding, he found a narrow hatch, sealed with an old iron latch. It led to a crawl space beneath the pulpit. The smell hit him first. Earth, mold, and something older. He crouched down, sweeping the light over the dirt floor. There were bones, small ones, 3 sets, each wrapped in decaying cloth. And beside them, a rusted key stamped with the letters WOP Westbridge Orphan Program. Hale exhaled slowly, the air thick with dust. Somewhere above, the wind rattled the windows like faint knocks. He reached for his radio, but then froze. From the far corner of the crawl space, a small voice whispered, "Help me." He turned the light, but the space was empty. Just old boards, roots pushing through the dirt. The voice came again, fainter this time, almost carried on the air. She told them. They heard her. Hale backed toward the hatch, eyes scanning the dark. For a moment, he thought he saw movement, a flicker of white in the beam, like the hem of a dress. Then the sound stopped. Silence pressed in from all sides. He climbed out, sealing the hatch behind him. When he looked up, someone was standing in the doorway of the church. A woman, barefoot, hair matted, wearing a thin nightgown. She was soaked through, shivering. "Katie Mercer," Hale said quietly. But when he stepped closer, she whispered something so soft it barely carried through the empty church. "They said it wasn't my turn." And before he could reach her, she turned and ran into the dark. The first patrol unit found nothing. By dawn, search teams were out again, combing through the woods that bordered the river behind the church, but it was as if the earth itself had swallowed Katie Mercer. Agent Hale stood by his SUV, eyes tracing the tree line, still replaying her last words in his head. They said it wasn't my turn. There was fear in her eyes, yes, but also something else. Recognition. As if she'd been waiting for that moment all along. By 7 a.m., the local radio had already broken the story. Missing teacher reappears, vanishes again before dawn. The townspeople came out in small groups, whispering near the yellow tape. Hale noticed the way they stared. Not curious, not frightened. Just tired. As though they'd seen this before. At the station, the evidence from the church was laid out across the table. 3 sets of remains, the rusted key, the scraps of fabric. Forensics confirmed what Hale already suspected. The bones were from children between the ages of 7 and 10, all female, all likely dead before 1982. Sheriff Weaver refused to meet his eye. "You shouldn't have gone under that church," he muttered. "You knew about this," Hale said. "You've known for years." Weaver slammed a fist against the desk. "You think I didn't try to do something? You think I could go against the people who built this town?" Hale's voice stayed calm. "Who exactly are we talking about?" Weaver looked toward the door, lowered his voice. "You want to understand Westbridge? Start with the pastor. His father ran that program, the Orphan Project. They called it charity, but it was something else. The church records went back nearly a century. Hale spent the rest of the day in the county archive, a converted library basement that smelled like old paper and mildew. The clerk, a wiry man in bifocals, brought him a faded ledger marked WOP, 1975 to 1980. Inside, the entries were written in neat, looping script. Dozens of names, each followed by a date of intake and a single word under disposition. Placed, transferred, or, disturbingly often, expired. Hale traced the names with his finger until one caught his eye. Abigail Moore, admitted, May 1979. Disposition, expired. Cause, not listed. He turned the page, and there it was, another entry, scribbled hastily, almost as if someone had added it later. Catherine Mercer, admitted, August 1998. Disposition, released to guardian. He froze. That was impossible. Katie would have been 5 years old in 1998. Her mother, Denise, had never mentioned adoption, but the handwriting was unmistakably the same. Hale drove straight to the Mercer house. Denise opened the door before he even knocked. Her face was pale, eyes red from crying. "She came back, didn't she?" Hale said softly. Denise hesitated. For a moment. Then she ran. I couldn't catch her. She looked wrong, like she didn't know who I was. "Mrs. Mercer," Hale said carefully, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is Katie your biological daughter?" Her hands trembled around the doorframe. "She's my daughter," she whispered. "Biologically?" A long silence. Then, almost inaudibly, "They told me she'd been abandoned. The church said she needed a home." "Who told you that?" She swallowed. "Pastor Moore, Abigail's father." By nightfall, Hale had a warrant to search the Moore residence. The pastor lived in a small house behind the cemetery, the same man who'd been sweeping the church when Hale first arrived. He didn't resist when they knocked, just opened the door, eyes hollow, hands folded like in prayer. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly. Inside, the house was neat but stale, full of old photographs, children's choirs, Sunday picnics, smiling faces frozen in time. In one frame, Hale spotted something strange. A group photo from 1979, labeled West Bridge Orphan Program, Summer Retreat. In the center was a man wearing a clerical collar and holding a little girl's hand. The girl was Abigail. And standing behind them, barely recognizable but clear, was a younger version of Sheriff Weaver. Hale sat the pastor down at the kitchen table. "Tell me what happened to those children." The old man's fingers twitched. "You wouldn't believe me if I did." "Try me." "It was my father's doing," the pastor began. He started the program to reform children who'd been deemed unfit, orphans, troublemakers, kids who didn't belong. The county funded it quietly, through the church. But he believed he was cleansing souls, purifying them for the Lord. Hale leaned forward. "And Abigail?" The pastor's voice cracked. "She tried to run. He locked her in the basement, said she'd spread corruption among the others. That night, the fire started. The one that burned the community center?" He nodded. "He called it an accident, but it wasn't. 3 girls died down there. They were buried beneath the church when it was rebuilt." Hale's knuckles whitened. And Katie Mercer? The pastor looked up, eyes trembling. Katie wasn't one of them, but she was born from what happened after. My father, he experimented. He wanted to see if faith could be reborn through sin. Katie's mother was one of the girls he kept hidden. When the program shut down, Denise was told the child had no family. She adopted her, never knowing the truth. Hale felt the room closing in. The air smelled of dust and candle wax. You're telling me Katie is the daughter of one of his victims? The pastor nodded. And when she came of age, she started to remember. The dreams, the field, the girl at the cross. Abigail never left her. She carried her memory. Maybe more than that. Where is she now? Hale asked. The pastor's eyes filled with tears. Where she always goes. To the water. They found Katie's footprints near the riverbank at dawn. Bare, faint, leading toward the reeds. A pair of searchlights swept over the current, catching something pale beneath the surface. Hale waded in, the mud thick around his boots. It was her nightgown, floating just below the surface, caught on a branch. But no body. A deputy shouted from farther downstream. Agent Hale, you need to see this. He turned. 50 yards away, half buried in the silt, stood another cross. Freshly built. New wood, still clean. And at its base, nailed in place, was an envelope. Hale pried it open. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed Katie standing in the church doorway from the night before. Her eyes were blacked out with marker. On the back, in looping handwriting, were 3 words. She forgave us. The investigation widened. Federal agents combed every inch of Westbridge, unearthing records, interviewing parishioners, mapping every graveyard connected to the church. The remains beneath the floor were reburied with full rites. Pastor Moore was taken into custody, but died before trial, an apparent heart attack in his cell. Sheriff Weaver retired a week later. The official report listed the Mercer case as unresolved, but closed. Agent Hale stayed one more night in town, sitting in his car outside the darkened church. Rain tapped against the windshield. In the distance, lightning flickered over the fields. He looked toward the cross, and for just a second, in the flash of light, he saw her, a small figure standing beside it, barefoot, hair matted, watching him. Then the light was gone. The next morning, the church collapsed. A sinkhole, they said. Years of erosion by the river. Nothing supernatural, just bad luck. But when workers cleared the rubble, they found something beneath the altar stones. Another shoe, small, white, with the initials KM. Rain washed over Westbridge like a cleansing ritual that refused to work. The church's collapse drew crews from across the county, and by sunrise, floodlights and generators surrounded the ruins like a battlefield. The air smelled of wet earth, diesel, and rot. Agent Hale stood beneath an umbrella, mud splattering his boots, staring at the gaping wound where the church once stood. Somewhere beneath the standing water, the white shoe glimmered in the beam of a flashlight. Technicians lifted it out carefully, sealing it in a clear evidence bag. Hale watched it being tagged. Item number 42, Exhibit 4B. The initials KM were smudged, but unmistakable. The sheriff was gone. The pastor was dead. And yet the story wasn't finished. Hale had seen it before, in cases where trauma stretched across generations, like an invisible thread. But something about Westbridge felt different. It wasn't just what people were hiding. It was what they believed. and what they'd convinced themselves was forgiven. 2 days after the collapse, the coroner's report came back. The bones found beneath the church belonged to 3 distinct children. Abigail Moore, age 9, confirmed by dental records from a long-closed county clinic. The other 2 were still unidentified. Their deaths were ruled undetermined, though evidence suggested prolonged confinement. In the margin of the report, Hale noticed a strange note in pencil. Bone density inconsistent. Possible post-mortem. Exposure to lie. Someone had tried to erase the past literally, to dissolve it. But ghosts don't dissolve. They cling to the people who made them. That night, Hale returned to the motel. He poured himself a cup of coffee gone cold hours earlier and stared at the wall, where he'd taped photographs in a grid. The field, the cross, the community center basement, the church hatch. In the center was the 911 call log from the night Katie vanished. He replayed it again through his laptop speakers. This is Katie Mercer. I think someone's in my house. A pause. Tell them what you did. The faint piano note. He zoomed into the audio spectrum, isolating the background hum. The pitch shifted subtly, a repeating mechanical rhythm. Not a piano. Not music at all. It was a bell. The next morning, Hale visited the ruins of the church again. Amid the debris, he found a cracked bronze bell, half buried in mud. Its clapper was missing, but its surface carried deep scratches, letters carved by hand, probably with a nail or knife. They spelled, "She rings still." He stared at the engraving, rain dripping from his coat, and realized something chilling. The tone on the 911 call, the bell, wasn't from the church at all. It came from somewhere else. The old Westbridge schoolhouse. The school had been abandoned since 1985, condemned after asbestos was found in the walls. Locals used it for storage, though most avoided it altogether. Hale pried open the front doors, their paint flaking in long strips. Inside, the corridors smelled of mold and chalk. Desks sat overturned, dust motes floating in the beams of his flashlight like static. In the main hall, the floorboards sagged under his boots. He found a rusted fire bell mounted above the stage, broken, but still recognizable. He hit play on the 911 call again. The echo matched perfectly. He swept his flashlight across the auditorium, and the beam caught something carved into the back wall. A mural, hidden beneath peeling layers of paint. It showed children again, but this time not holding hands. They were kneeling, heads bowed, as a shadowed figure stood over them, holding a lantern. The figure's face was blank. Around the edges of the mural, faint handwriting circled like a prayer. What we bury will grow again. Behind the stage, Hale found a narrow crawl space, fresh wood, not original construction. Someone had built it recently. Inside, he discovered stacks of Polaroids. Dozens of them. Each one showed the same thing. A girl, maybe 9 or 10, standing beside the cross in the field. The photos were decades apart. Different seasons, different lighting, but always the same pose. The earliest photo was dated 1979. The most recent, 2 weeks ago. And in the last image, she wasn't alone. Katie Mercer stood beside her, smiling faintly. Both of them holding hands. By nightfall, Hale knew what he had to do. He drove back toward the field, headlights cutting through the fog. The cross was still there, framed by lightning and the slow sweep of rain across the tall grass. He left his vehicle idling, its beams illuminating the wet wood. He approached slowly, careful with each step. The mud sucked at his shoes. At the base of the cross, a new envelope waited. No photograph this time, just a folded page, soaked but legible. It was a confession. We thought we could end it. We burned their bodies, sealed their names, prayed until our throats bled. But the river doesn't forget. The earth won't keep secrets. We asked for forgiveness, but she never left. We see her in our daughters, our students, our dreams. We see her every time we close our eyes. At the bottom was a single signature, D. Weaver. Hale folded the paper, sliding it into an evidence sleeve. Thunder rolled overhead. Then, through the noise, he heard it, a faint hum. Not the wind, not the rain. A voice, soft, childlike, coming from somewhere behind the tree line. "Help me!" He turned his flashlight toward the sound. "Abigail?" he whispered. Branches cracked ahead. The beam caught a glimpse of white fabric, then vanished. He moved closer, pushing through the brush until the ground beneath him softened into waterlogged earth. And there she was, standing knee-deep in the flooded river, facing him. Her eyes were pale, unfocused, her hair plastered against her skin. "Katie!" he called. But her voice, when it came, wasn't hers anymore. "They forgave him," she said softly, "but not themselves." Then she lifted her arm, pointing past him, toward the cross on the hill. He turned. The cross was on fire. By the time Hale reached it, flames had consumed the base, sparks leaping toward the dark sky. The heat forced him back. He grabbed his radio, shouting for emergency response, but static drowned his words. Behind him, the river churned louder, the rain falling harder, as if the entire landscape was collapsing inward. The fire burned fast, too fast for wet wood. And as the flames died down, Hale saw something etched beneath the charred surface. A name. Abigail Moore. The inscription was new, freshly carved into the wood just before it burned. He turned back toward the river. Katie was gone. Only the water remained, rippling under the red reflection of the fire. At dawn, the flames had burned themselves out. The cross was nothing but ash and smoke curling toward a gray sky. Hale stood alone at the site, soaked, exhausted, staring at the river that kept swallowing its secrets. He knew there'd be reports, press briefings, official statements that said nothing. He also knew what he'd heard. The child's voice, the confession, the truth buried in that town's soil. He looked toward the distant ruins of the church, the leaning headstones in the cemetery, the mist curling off the water. Something shifted beneath the current, a pale shimmer that might have been sunlight or might not. He whispered to the wind, more to himself than anyone else. "Rest now, Abby." The river answered with silence. But in that silence, if you listened long enough, you could still hear it. A faint bell ringing beneath the water. The FBI shut down the West Bridge investigation at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. Official cause of closure. All viable leads exhausted. Primary subjects deceased. Agent Thomas Hale read the memo twice, then folded it neatly and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He'd seen that line before in too many reports. Bureaucratic shorthand for stop asking questions. But something about this case refused to stay buried. He couldn't shake the image of the river, of the voice whispering through static and rain. That night, Hale packed up his motel room. The wallpaper peeled in the corners, and the floorboards still creaked from the storm. He zipped his suitcase halfway, then stopped when he saw the Polaroids spread across the bed, the ones from the schoolhouse crawl space, the photos of the girl and the cross. He noticed something he hadn't before. In the earliest photo, the grass around the cross was short, freshly mowed. In each subsequent image, it grew taller, wilder, until it almost covered the girl's legs. In the last photo, the one from 2 weeks ago, it reached her waist. But behind her, half obscured by shadow, was a shape. A figure. Not Katie. Not a child. A man. Hale held the picture under the desk lamp, adjusting the angle until the details came through. The line of a badge clipped to the belt, the brim of a deputy's hat. And just like that, his breath left him. The next morning, he drove to Sheriff Weaver's old cabin on the outskirts of town. The property had been abandoned since his retirement. A for sale sign leaned sideways in the overgrown yard, half buried in mud. The front door hung open. Its hinges rusted. Inside, the air was stale and cold. The living room walls were lined with framed commendations now coated with dust. On a small table near the window sat a Bible, a chipped coffee cup, and a metal box secured with a padlock. Hale pried it open with a penknife. Inside were dozens of photographs. Children, church events, orphan program retreats. And near the bottom, a single Polaroid identical to the ones from the crawl space. The cross, the field, the same little girl. On the back, written in neat pen, "Abby forgave me. I saw her last night." Hale sat back, the box still open. Weaver had lied from the start, but not to cover up guilt in the usual sense. It wasn't corruption or greed that bound him to the town's secret. It was belief. The man had convinced himself forgiveness could erase what he'd done. There were medical records, too. A single manila envelope labeled West Bridge Recovery Program. Inside, Hale found scans of skeletal remains and pathology notes from the state coroner, dated months before the church collapsed. They'd already exhumed the bodies once, quietly, without federal knowledge. Someone had reburied them. That night, the wind carried a low hum across the valley. It was almost a whisper. Hale leaned against his car outside the cabin, the headlights cutting through mist that shimmered silver in the moonlight. He checked his watch, 11:58 p.m. Then his phone buzzed, an unknown number. No caller ID. He hesitated, then answered. "Agent Hale?" Static filled the line. Then, faintly, a woman's voice. "She's awake." "Katie," he said sharply. "Who is this?" The line went dead. He called it back immediately. No signal. Hale stood still for a long moment. Then he turned toward the road. He already knew where to go. The field. The cross was gone. Only a blackened patch of soil remained where the fire had burned it down. The air smelled faintly of smoke, even after the rain. Hale moved his flashlight in slow arcs across the grass. Then he saw it. Footprints. Bare, small, leading toward the river. He followed them, boots sinking in the mud, until he reached the bank. The water was calm tonight, too calm. Its surface reflected the moonlight like glass. Something broke the reflection, a ripple spreading outward. Hale leaned forward. A figure stood waist-deep in the water. White nightgown, hair tangled, head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. "Katie," he called softly. She turned toward him. Her eyes were different this time. Dark, reflective, like the surface of the river itself. "They said it was over," she whispered. "But she never left me." "Who?" "Katie. Abigail." Her voice trembled. "She wants them to remember." Hale took a cautious step closer. "Then tell me how." Katie raised her hand, pointing past him toward the trees. Hale turned. Dozens of crosses stood there, thin, wooden, hand-carved. Some new, some so old they leaned with rot. He hadn't noticed them before because they blended with the tree line. Each one bore a name. Some were legible. Grace, Sarah, Abigail. Others had faded away entirely. The rain began to fall again, soft and slow. When he turned back, Katie was gone. Only ripples remained. The official recovery team never found a body, just a nightgown tangled in reeds and a rusted key lying in the mud beside it. The same one Hale had found in the church basement, the one stamped OP. The West Bridge file was sealed under federal classification 6 weeks later. The town returned to its routines. The ruins of the church were cleared, the field fenced off. A new "Welcome to Westbridge" sign was erected by the highway. Fresh paint. Same crooked lean. But for those who lived there, the nights grew different. The river started flooding at odd hours, even when there was no rain. People claimed they could hear a bell echoing under the current, a single low note that came and went with the fog. And sometimes, if you stood by the water long enough, you could see small handprints pressed into the mud. There, 1 minute, gone the next. 6 months later, in a secure office at Quantico, Agent Thomas Hale received a package with no return address. Inside was a single item, a new Polaroid. The field again, the cross rebuilt, and 2 figures standing beside it, 1 child, 1 grown woman. He turned it over. No handwriting this time, just a faint smudge where the ink hadn't dried right. Under the light, the smudge revealed a shape. Letters half-formed, but readable. "Forgive us." Hale stared at the photo for a long time, then reached for his case file. He slid the picture inside, sealed it, and placed it back in the cabinet marked Westbridge 7925. He turned off the lamp, walked to the window, and looked out at the fog creeping across the Potomac. The night was quiet, still. But if you listened closely, really listened, you could hear it faintly from somewhere far away. A bell, ringing once, then twice, like a voice reminding the living that the dead never really sleep. If you liked this story, please subscribe to the channel for more true crime mysteries.